Yo guys, what's up? This is Jake from JumpJet, and it's been a while, but I'm just gonna get back into the swing of things. I've got a new apartment, a new studio setup. I got a nice fancy little mic here, and I'm ready to get back into going through the most common types of questions that you'll get during a JavaScript front-end developer interview. So today we're going to go through event delegation, and this should be a fun one. So I'm going to assume that you don't know what event delegation is. I'm going to take it through kind of slowly and step by step. If you already know most of the basics, you can probably skip ahead or even just ignore this video. So, also apologies for the hair, but yeah, I just can't be bothered. Event delegation. Events are things that happen within the DOM. The DOM is the document object model, and that's a representation of the elements on a web page. So it's important to note that when you see this kind of markup, this is just a description to a browser of how to lay out a web page. But what we actually interact with is the DOM, which is this tree-like structure that lays out the relationships between elements and this ancestral tree, parents and children and grandparents and so on. So what I've done is I've laid out a very basic page here using Code Sandbox, which is actually very cool. And I will take you through the way that event delegation works. So what else we got here? The thing to start off with, I think, that makes it make sense is the concept of event bubbling. Event bubbling is, once again, it's like it sounds. Bubbles rise to the top. If you've ever been at the bottom of a pool and exhaled, the bubbles rise to the top. And that's actually what happens within the DOM. When a click event is registered, it starts at the child or it starts at the target. And it actually bubbles its way up. So it's registered on the element itself, but also it's registered by its parent and then its parent's parent to the top of the document. So it's always really important just to remember that events are registered on the target, but they bubble all the way up the tree. The second thing that's important to understand is that if an event isn't handled, if there is no listener listening out for that event, then even though it's happened and it happens in the DOM, it doesn't really matter. For all intents and purposes, it's invisible. I could click around the page as I'm doing here, and you see here I do have a handler set up, but this happens all the time. Even the mouse move is registering events on the DOM, but it's not being handled, so you don't see the fact that that's happening. And this is what happens when you click on an item. We can add a listener that will register that event, or we don't have to, and that's fine. But if we want to start handling events when things are clicked on, we have to write that within our scripts, within our JavaScript. So the first thing you'll see here is just a really basic example of an event listener. So I get the body element. I use this syntax, add event listener. I add a click event, so it's going to register any click. And then this is the actual handler callback. So this is what will happen when that click is registered. A little side note that's always important to remember, this event argument, or this parameter, which eventually becomes an argument, is an object. This is really important and super useful to know that you might see this represented as E or EVT or event. That's the most common way that people, developers describe it within the code, but this is an object. And that means that it has properties that we can investigate, and we'll get into that a bit later. So I have an event handler, I have a listener, and it's going to register a click on the body. You'll see down here in the console, I click, and the body received that click event. Okay, so the body knows that that's happening. Now, I've also set up this unordered list, so that's that. and within it we have 5 children. Now, down here, this is where we get to the event delegation part. Delegate is to hand responsibility to something. So event delegation is about handing responsibility for handling an event to an element. We're going to say that even though there's lots of other elements, we're going to give the responsibility to you. So in this code here, what I've done is I've now handled responsibility for this click event to this unordered list, this one here. What that means is that when there's a click registered in the child, in any one of these children, because we have event bubbling, the event is going to travel up to the parent, and because we have the listener, it's then going to register that event, and then we can do something with the event object. So let's just see that in action. I'm going to click on number 4, look down at the console, and there we go. The unordered list is handling the event from item number 4. And then of course the event continues to bubble up. The click event goes up to the body. That's handled by the body. Let's get rid of this here for now. Can I do this? I hate the way this comments out. Anyway, let me just do some quick commenting out. This is kind of lame. Normally you can select it all and get rid of it in one go, but nonetheless. Okay, so got to click, the URL's handling it. Now, this gets to the next important part, which is if I have the UL that has this listener on it, it's listening for the click event, how do we know which item has actually been clicked on? And that comes back to the idea that the event object has properties on it. And that's why in that object, when the event is registered by the parent, because the event bubbles up, we get the event object, and within that we can look within the object, look at the properties within it, and then I'm saying target. Target is the actual element that is being clicked on, and that is registered, and it's kept within that object. And then I can unpack that at any level that I decided to listen for that event. And that's what we've done here. So I've got the event object, I unpack the target property, and then on that target, which is element number 3, there's a class which we've put onto it. And I've decided to pull out an index from that class array. And that's why I can then go, whichever one I'm clicking on, even though the event is handled, it's delegated to the unordered list. It's still able to know which element was clicked on. All right. Let me see. So detecting an event. Now there's 2 more things that I want to handle here. One is that one of the primary uses for event delegation, and this is important that if you're asked this question in an interview, it's important to mention this, is that event delegation is super useful for a couple of reasons. One is that if I have a huge number of items, I can, instead of adding an event listener, which end up being quite expensive, instead of adding it to each and every individual item, I can put it in one place. I have one event listener that handles those quick events. And then also I still know which one it is. And I can do some logic here that decides whether to do something if, if the class is number 2 or what have you. There's also another thing down here. You don't have to really worry too much about this code, but what I'm doing is that when I click this button, I'm going to dynamically add a new item to this list. Now, normally, if I had event listeners on every individual element, when I dynamically add an element, I would have to also add an event listener. So that I have to write more code and try to handle all these different cases. Event delegation allows me to ignore all of that and just have the event listener here on the parent, delegate that responsibility to this unordered list, this parent. So I'm going to add number 6 here and click on 6, and you look at the console, the UL is handling that event. So that's another part of why event delegation is so powerful, so useful It's really actually cool. So I'm going to uncomment this for one last time. So this is the event listener on the body. So you might ask, and it's reasonable to ask, if we have event bubbling, the event is going to bubble its way all up from the target to its parent, to its grandparents, all the way up that ancestral tree, all the way up that DOM to the top of the document. Then actually, if I got click listeners somewhere else, isn't that going to trigger all of them? It starts getting a bit messy, and that's true. But there is, as always, a method within JavaScript that enables us to override that behavior, and that is stop propagation. It'd be kind of cool if it was called stop bubbling, but it's called stop propagation. To propagate is to move outwards or to spread. So once again, because the event is an object, it has methods on it. So we use this stop propagation method on the event object, and we put that in the handler for the unordered list. And now instead of this being registered, the body now should not receive this event. We're going to click it. There we go. So with the stop propagation in place, the bubbling was halted at a certain point, and now I get rid of it, and now you see that the body is receiving these click events again. So the messy-haired man has returned to handle another JavaScript front-end developer question. I will be doing more of these, and hopefully I will have less messy hair, and I won't record videos so early in the morning. But I just had to do it to get back into the momentum of things. Hopefully that cleared some things up. If you have any questions, just add them in the comments section. Thank you to the people that have subscribed. Sorry I've been so slow in getting back into it, but life happens. If you want to have actual one-on-one practice doing a front-end developer interview, I run a website called JumpJet. It's jumpjet.io. You can reach out there, and we can do a practice interview and get you fighting fit for your first job. Or otherwise, just, let me know in the comments if I've missed something, or if you want to discuss something, whatever. So hopefully that helped you out, and I will see you in a new video sometime soon. Okay, good luck, guys. Bye.